The great chamber of the council was a cathedral of arrogance, filled with banners of empires that had fought and conquered across the stars. Representatives of dozens of warrior races leaned back in their gilded seats, speaking of their victories with indulgent pride. They spoke in deep, resonant tones that shook the air, their words carrying the certainty that their armies stood unmatched. Stories of campaigns against insected swarms and sieges that lasted decades were told like tavern songs, each anecdote earning laughter and nods of approval. Amid this posturing, the subject of Earth arose, carried by an offhand remark from a general with tusks jutting from his jaw. The mention of humanity drew immediate chuckles, for to them the species was little more than a curiosity, barely out of their cradle, reckless and underarmed. The council's hollow displays projected primitive battle records of humans, clumsy tanks rolling across deserts, infantry pressed together in narrow streets, aircraft streaking the sky with trails of smoke. To eyes accustomed to fleets that could shatter moons, such footage was almost comedic. Comparisons were made to training drones or ceremonial militias. A scaled commander leaned forward, sneering that deploying humans in real interstellar engagements would be no different than throwing sticks at plasma cannons. Another added that perhaps humans were best suited as jesters in the grand theater of war. The laughter rolled through the chamber, echoing across stone walls carved with the victories of elder species. The notion of Earth joining coalition exercises was suggested as if it were an entertaining sideshow. The most decorated strategists nodded with exaggerated amusement. What danger could arise from inviting a people whose battles were still fought with gunpowder and crude missiles? Some insisted that this invitation would boost morale, offering a spectacle of fragile bipeds collapsing under pressure. A vote was called, and with near unanimity the decision was made: humanity would be summoned to contribute troops to the war games on the Council's proving grounds. The purpose was not to measure strength but to provide a lesson in humility, to show Earth its place beneath the boot of galactic power. The declaration was broadcast throughout the chamber, and messengers carried the news across the star systems. Already wagers began forming among the delegates. How long would the humans last before retreating? Would they fold in minutes or perhaps survive an hour by hiding in ruins? The jesting was cruel but confident, because the reputation of Earth's military was a hollow shadow in galactic records. They had fought internal wars, true, but against peers just as primitive. Against interstellar armies forged in millennia of conquest, they were an afterthought. The Council was convinced the outcome was predetermined. Yet beneath the roaring laughter and the clinking of ceremonial weapons, unease flickered in a few of the older commanders. Whispers surfaced of human operations carried out far from the public gaze, whispers of soldiers who fought in silence, vanishing into jungles, deserts, and frozen wastelands with uncanny success. Reports filed by covert observers spoke of units that did not fight in ranks but as shadows, using precision and patience as their weapons. These murmurs were quickly dismissed by the majority as exaggerations, tales born of myth rather than evidence. Still, a few attentive generals exchanged wary glances, their instincts pricked by the possibility that the mockery might be masking something more dangerous. The final decree was inscribed into the record. Earth would be tested before the galaxy, its soldiers thrust into war games against the best the Council could assemble. To the gathered empires, it was an act of spectacle. To the humans, it would be presented as an opportunity for recognition. The stage was set in the Great War Colosseum, a world built entirely for simulated battles of titanic scale. Armies had clashed there for centuries, raising the prestige of victors and shaming those who faltered. The Council expected Earth to join the latter category, a footnote in history, a moment of derision preserved in archives. But behind the confidence, an unspoken question lingered in the shadows of the chamber. What if the whispers were true? What if humanity's strength did not lie in massed armies or fleets of steel, but in something subtler, something alien generals had never faced before? The laughter drowned it out for now, yet doubt had already found its way into the cracks of certainty, waiting to erupt when the truth of Earth's soldiers finally stood revealed. The proving grounds were prepared with grand ceremony, a world remade into a labyrinth of ruined cities, fortified ridges, and battlefields meant to test the finest legions in the galaxy. Alien banners fluttered above command balconies, their colors bright against the steel horizon. Armies from dozens of species had arrived in full strength, towering infantry with scaled hides, armored vehicles bristling with energy cannons, aerial formations that darkened the skies. Each contingent displayed its discipline, soldiers lined in perfect ranks, weapons gleaming under artificial suns. The air carried a hum of expectation, the certainty that a spectacle was about to unfold. When the human detachment finally arrived, the mood shifted. Instead of legions, only a small formation disembarked from their transport. The crowd expected columns stretching across the plain, yet what emerged were no more than a few dozen figures in muted uniforms, carrying compact gear. Their presence seemed almost insulting to the scale of the games. Some delegates burst into open laughter, pointing at the size disparity with disbelief. "This is all Earth has to offer?" they jeered, voices amplified through comm channels. To them it was proof of backwardness, an admission that humans lacked the ability to muster a proper force. The humans, however, moved with quiet precision. Their boots struck the ground in rhythm, not hurried, not hesitant, each step measured. They did not glance at the jeering spectators. Instead, they scanned their surroundings with the detached calm of professionals, their eyes behind tinted visors giving nothing away. No banners, no grand speeches, no theatrical display accompanied their arrival. Where alien armies sought to impress with numbers, the humans projected restraint, an unshaken confidence that unsettled a handful of the more perceptive generals watching from the gallery. An alien warlord leaned forward, booming a taunt across the field, asking where Earth's artillery was, where its armored columns and support craft had gone. The human commander, a man with weathered features and a voice that carried without strain, replied evenly, "We don't bring armies. We bring wars." The words rippled through the listening ranks. Some laughed harder at what they perceived as bravado, others fell silent, caught by the chill in the man's tone. The humans spoke little else, their focus returning inward as they checked weapons, adjusted equipment, and shared quiet signals that needed no words. Observers noticed rituals that seemed deceptively mundane, gloved hands tightening straps, weapons dismantled and reassembled in seconds, brief exchanges of eye contact that communicated trust. Nothing about them suggested panic or awe at the scale of forces arrayed against them. If anything, their economy of motion gave the impression that they had rehearsed this moment countless times. It was the absence of spectacle that unsettled those few who were paying attention. Wagers circulated through the balconies. Some claimed the humans would not last 5 minutes once the games commenced. Others, more generous, predicted they might cling on for an hour by hiding among ruins. The consensus remained the same: their failure was inevitable, their humiliation preordained. The council's scribes prepared their ledgers to record the lesson Earth would learn at its own expense. Yet, in the command balconies, a small number of veterans kept their eyes fixed on the humans with growing unease, noting the discipline that radiated from their stillness. Alien commanders were used to reading fear in lesser species. They knew the smell of it, the subtle fidgeting, the anxious darting of eyes. None of those signs were present here. Instead, the humans radiated a cold readiness, as though the outcome of the contest had already been calculated in their minds. Their silence cut sharper than any declaration could have, their stillness resembling coiled springs waiting to release. By the time the signals were given and the machinery of the war games began to whir to life, the mockery in the galleries had reached its peak. Yet beneath the laughter, beneath the confidence, the first slivers of doubt had begun to spread. The galaxy's greatest armies had gathered to prove superiority beyond question, but the humans had not come to be measured by the same scale. They had come to redefine it. The opening signal thundered across the proving grounds, and alien formations surged forward with the confidence of predators about to corner prey. Towering infantry advanced in waves, their heavy weapons glowing, while armored crawlers rumbled across cracked concrete. In the skies above, scout craft circled, expecting to watch a brief display of resistance collapse under sheer weight. At first it seemed the humans had scattered, their small numbers swallowed by the labyrinth of ruins. From the balconies, laughter rose again, the council convinced the inevitable had begun. Moments later, the first cracks appeared in that certainty. A lead formation of reptilian soldiers entered a deserted boulevard and vanished in an eruption of precision fire. Shots rang from angles no one had anticipated, each strike placed with surgical accuracy. Within seconds, dozens fell before any counterfire could even be aimed. Observers strained to follow the source, but the humans never revealed themselves for long. They moved like shadows, appearing briefly, striking, then vanishing into debris as if the ruins themselves had come alive. Alien generals shouted commands, ordering their troops to close ranks and sweep the sector. Yet every advance only bled more soldiers. Explosions erupted in choke points, cutting squads apart with improvised charges planted in advance. Others stumbled into crossfire that seemed orchestrated with uncanny foresight. When aerial scouts relayed coordinates, by the time reinforcements arrived, the humans had already shifted, leaving nothing but broken bodies and silence. For commanders accustomed to direct contests of strength, this invisible predator style of fighting defied comprehension. Onlookers began to murmur, the humor thinning as casualty counts scrolled higher. The human presence was never overwhelming, never even visible in force. They fought as fragments, small fire teams coordinating without hesitation, their communication so seamless that every alien counteraction was met by an immediate and lethal answer. Precision strikes silenced officers first, then support units, unraveling command structures with merciless efficiency. It was not chaos by accident, it was calculated dismantling, executed with eerie calm. A warlord bellowed that the humans were cowards, afraid of open battle. Yet the results could not be denied. Columns meant to sweep streets were reduced to wreckage within minutes. Shield formations broke under relentless flanking fire, their protective walls turned into death traps when explosives detonated beneath them. Vehicles meant to dominate the urban terrain found themselves immobilized by well-placed charges on weak points. The battlefield became a graveyard, and still the humans remained unseen more often than not, their presence marked only by sudden bursts of violence, and the trail of destruction left behind. Council members who had mocked the idea of Earth's participation now leaned forward, their amusement replaced by unease. They had expected spectacle, not silence punctuated by precision. They had anticipated bravado, not an unshakable rhythm of kill and withdraw. Every alien commander watching knew the difference between luck and design, and what unfolded below was no accident. This was doctrine, honed through relentless training, applied with chilling efficiency. As the hours stretched, the imbalance grew undeniable. Losses among the alien elite soared far beyond projections, while the small human detachment remained operational, every maneuver suggesting a depth of discipline the Council had never attributed to Earth. The laughter that had filled the galleries at the outset had evaporated, leaving only tense whispers. The word predator surfaced more than once, spoken not with mockery but with dawning recognition. By the time the engagement was paused for assessment, alien formations had been shredded far more thoroughly than anyone dared admit aloud. A silence hung in the chamber, broken only by the soft hum of projectors replaying the carnage. The humans had not simply survived, they had inverted the balance of power in a contest designed to humiliate them. What began as a performance for the galaxy's amusement had transformed into a demonstration that unsettled even the most arrogant of empires. Humanity, once dismissed as fragile, had revealed a truth far more dangerous. They did not need numbers to command the battlefield, only the will and precision to turn it into a hunting ground. The Council ordered escalation. What had begun as entertainment was turning into a matter of pride, and no empire was willing to accept humiliation at the hands of a species once dismissed as trivial. Reinforcements poured into the proving grounds, armored walkers the size of fortresses, shielded shock troops bred for endurance, and aerial squadrons designed to erase resistance with overwhelming firepower. The gathered delegates reassured themselves that no small detachment could withstand the galaxy's finest when fully unleashed. The war games would restore balance, they told one another, and the spectacle would end as it was always meant to. The humans adjusted without hesitation. Where others saw insurmountable force, they saw opportunity. Fire teams splintered, spreading across sectors with uncanny coordination. Each move seemed premeditated, yet adapted instantly to changing threats. The walkers advancing through narrow streets were met not with futile resistance, but with silence until sudden charges detonated beneath their joints, toppling giants in a shower of sparks. Shielded phalanxes found themselves drawn into alleys where overhead structures collapsed, crushing formations before they could deploy their strength. Aerial units dove in with confidence, only to vanish from the sky as compact launchers fired from rooftops with lethal precision. Every countermeasure revealed a terrifying truth: the humans had anticipated escalation. Their doctrine was not to meet strength with strength but to dismantle it piece by piece, turning the opponent's superiority into a liability. Communications among alien forces began to fracture under a barrage of misinformation. False signals echoed across frequencies, convincing squads they were being flanked when no enemy was present, drawing them into ambushes that ended with unerring fire from invisible marksmen. The battlefield itself became hostile, reshaped by the humans' ability to twist terrain and information into weapons. From the balconies, commanders who once sneered now gripped the rails, watching their best units crumble under a contest they no longer understood. They had trained for wars of attrition, for battles where endurance and might decided victory. The humans fought by another philosophy entirely. Their creed was efficiency, every movement purposeful, every engagement ending before it fully began. Observers described them as ghosts, appearing, striking, and vanishing with no trace but the wreckage left behind. The term was no longer an insult but a grim acknowledgement of what unfolded. Captured survivors painted an even darker picture. They spoke of silence that stalked them, of comrades disappearing one by one, of voices from their own command channels leading them into death. Morale among alien troops plummeted as rumors spread that humans could see through walls, predict every movement, and strike from nowhere. Fear, an element alien generals believed irrelevant in disciplined ranks, spread like fire. Armies accustomed to dominance now faltered, not from lack of numbers or equipment, but from the erosion of certainty. The human commanders' words gained new weight as events unfolded. "We don't bring armies. We bring wars." It was no longer bravado but a visible doctrine, a philosophy that treated conflict not as a contest of numbers but as a craft of absolute focus. Their adaptability was unmatched, their ruthlessness undeniable, and above all, their unity unshakable. In every skirmish, their trust in one another was evident: silent signals, movements executed with perfect timing, decisions made with the certainty of instinct. No alien chain of command displayed such cohesion. Council delegates argued heatedly among themselves, searching for explanations. Some called the humans reckless, insisting their methods could not succeed in prolonged campaigns. Others, more honest, admitted that what they witnessed was no accident of chance. It was the product of a culture that had learned to fight in conditions harsher than any simulation, refined by centuries of conflict where failure meant extinction. For the first time in generations, the Council was forced to confront a reality none had expected. Humanity had not entered the proving grounds to survive. They had come to dominate. The final stage was meant to erase all doubt. The Council abandoned restraint and ordered a coalition assault, gathering warriors from every attending empire into a single overwhelming force. Tens of thousands were deployed in unison, a tide of soldiers, machines, and aircraft so vast that even the most cautious observers believed the humans would finally be buried under sheer inevitability. The proving grounds trembled with the march of colossal units, energy fields lit the skies, and commanders promised one another that this would end the embarrassment. For a moment, confidence returned to the galleries, bolstered by numbers too large to imagine failing. The humans stood few against many, yet their demeanor never shifted. Before the assault began, they shared brief exchanges, nods, faint grins, the kind of quiet camaraderie that required no words. To outside eyes it looked absurd, a fraction of fighters preparing to face an ocean of enemies. Yet that stillness radiated something that unsettled even the most hardened veterans watching from above. These were not troops about to be crushed. These were predators ready to finish the hunt. When the wave advanced, the humans struck with timing so precise it defied belief. Artillery was redirected mid-flight by countermeasures that bent targeting systems against their own users. Pathways the aliens believed secure erupted in cascades of fire, as traps long prepared ignited beneath their feet. Urban choke points turned into slaughter zones, where every step forward funneled legions into fields of overlapping fire. The humans moved like fluid through the chaos, splitting and rejoining with seamless cohesion, always striking where confidence was highest, always vanishing before retaliation could land. Alien commanders shouted for persistence, urging their troops to press forward, but the battlefield itself betrayed them. Vehicles piled into wreckage created by deliberate demolitions, aerial craft collided while evading unseen threats, and shielded units collapsed under relentless flanking fire that seemed to anticipate every formation. The coalition had brought numbers without imagination, while the humans wielded imagination as a weapon sharper than any blade. Each maneuver cut deeper into morale, transforming certainty into panic. From the council balconies, the spectacle no longer resembled a contest. It resembled a dissection. The galaxy's greatest armies were not merely losing, they were being studied, broken down, and dismantled with clinical precision. Delegates who had jeered days earlier now sat in silence, their pride curdling into dread. What they witnessed was not brute survival but mastery, the kind of mastery that could not be measured by conventional scales. The laughter of mockery had been replaced by the stillness of fear. The climax came not with a single decisive blow but with the collapse of order itself. Entire divisions refused to advance, officers were cut down before their commands could take shape, and the coalition's overwhelming tide dissolved into fragments fleeing in every direction. In contrast, the human detachment remained intact, their casualties shockingly light. When the signal finally declared the exercise concluded, the proving grounds lay littered with the wreckage of thousands, while the few stood unbowed, weapons steady, eyes calm. A hush fell across the chamber. No voice dared to frame what had happened as accident or chance. The numbers spoke for themselves, and the images replayed on the hollow displays told a truth that could not be softened. Against every projection, against the combined might of the councils chosen, the humans had not only endured but demonstrated superiority of a kind no one had prepared to acknowledge. One delegate whispered the question that haunted every listener: if this was their restraint, what would their fury look like in a real war? The silence that followed was answer enough. Humanity had been underestimated, mocked, and treated as irrelevant. Yet the demonstration left no ambiguity. They were not a species to be dismissed. They were a force to be feared. The verdict of the games lingered in the final words spoken by those who witnessed it. The galaxy once laughed at Earth's soldiers. After that day, no one laughed again.